Hey guys, I am Game Advisor, and today we are going to be going over the top 10 things that we are most excited for in Starbase. So let's go ahead and jump right into the video. So starting at the bottom of our list with number 10, we have the mining. Now the mining in Starbase is something a little different from most games that we see these days where you just go and smack a rock and you're done. Yes, that is still in the game and you will still be doing that, but they've added so many cool elements like transporting rocks through the gravitational poles, or using mining lasers in order to mine large asteroids, or even breaking out the most important resources inside the asteroid in order to use them, so that way you can carry back only valuable cargo rather than having to carry back the non-valuable cargo. I just think it's so interesting because there's so many different mechanics revolving mining, as it's probably going to be one of the main ways that we make our money in order to build our spaceships. Moving on to number 9 on our list is the amount of depth in the tools. If you've seen any footage of Starbase, then you know how many tools are actually in the game. And we're not just talking about weapons and stuff here, we're talking about the building tools, the different tools you have to see structural stability, the YOLO code tools. It is just immense how many tools they give you in order to create exactly what you want within the game. So I am personally just excited to get to actually use all of these and see how each and every one of them work and interact with each other. Number 8 on our list is something that was announced relatively recently within the last few months, which is turning gas into minerals. If you don't know what this is already, what happens is there are some mineral-rich gas fields around the map, and you can go to those and you can actually suck out the gas from the air and turn it into condensed blocks of minerals. There's actually a whole process where you take it out of the air, separate the different gases, then use those gases to make different materials, and the materials turn into blocks, which you can then use to actually melt down into usable materials. It's a whole process, but it is just such a cool concept, and the way and the steps that you have to do it, it's not just push a button, all right, I have it. It's actually a whole process you have to set up logistically. So I am really excited to see how this one's going to work, as I am with honestly everything on the list, so I'll probably just stop saying that at this point. Next up for me is going to be the ground combat. Again, if you've seen a lot of footage of Starbase, there is tons of footage of people fighting on foot-to-foot combat. Initially, I was a little worried that this game was going to turn into only ship combat, because it didn't really seem like there was a lot of benefit to fighting on the ground. But as we're going to talk about in the next thing that I'm excited for, which is the siege mechanics, you actually have to go onto the ground and it forces you into hand-to-hand combat. This means that you're going to be using your actual jumping onto different walls in order to get different angles, building structures in the middle of combat to get cover, and I am just super excited to see it, as I know there's so many different weapons they have too. Everything from railguns that can shoot through multiple walls to a shotgun that can't really shoot through much but does a lot of damage when you get up close. So I'm just excited to get to play with all of these little toys the game is going to offer. After that, we have the guild siege mechanics, or the company siege mechanics, whatever you want to call them. This was something that was just recently talked about and is not actually going to be in the game at launch, but should be within a few months according to the Starbase dev team. The guild siege mechanics we're talking about here is the way in which they set up their system so that you can plan to be online during a certain time when you're going to be attacked. If you don't already know, you have something called a safe zone around stations that you build, which will essentially act as your guild or your company's protective sphere where you can't be attacked and you're safe within there. However, those can be taken down with capital ships, which we'll talk about in a moment, but when they are taken down, you actually have to use on-foot gameplay to capture control points in order to take control of their station, and it's balanced based around the number of players you have. So if say you had a small group of 5 or 10 players, you might only have 1 or 2 control points, where a group of say 100 or even 1,000 players could have all the way up to 8, which is what they're currently saying. Again, this is subject to change, but I am just excited for this, as it creates a way for smaller guilds or groups to actually have a chance to compete against those bigger ones. At the end of the day though, a 1,000-man group will probably still beat a 10-man group, but it is just nice to see they're trying to reduce the gap. Alrighty, we are halfway there with number 5, which is capital ships. Capital ships look amazing. This is how you're going to take down enemy safe zones at their stations in order to attack them, by having a capital ship of equal or greater value or size that is a military capital ship in order to do so. The capital ships are also fully destructible, and they can be massive. According to the dev team, they can range anywhere from 100 meters at its smallest all the way up to 2 kilometers at its biggest, which can house up to 1,000 players. These things are supposed to be big and expensive as well as powerful, so just more reasons I'm excited to see this into the game, as to see how it will actually impact it and how it will change the whole safe zone dynamic, since that is the only thing that will be able to take down safe zones at the time of recording. Number 4 on our list is the fully destructible environment. Granted, you're in space, so there's a lot of empty everything everywhere, but anytime you see something, you can destroy it, excluding the initial safe zones where new players spawn. I'm glad that's in the game, because I don't think it would be fun to grief new players, as it would kill the player base not having that protection. That being said, it is so cool to see that everything in the game is fully destructible, from cutting a wire in your ship and shutting off your engines, to cutting the ship in half, to destroying asteroids, destroying stations. If you can think of it and it's something you can build, it's destroyable. The only exception to this rule that I currently know of is the actual moons and the safe zones you start in, which we already talked about. The moons themselves, I believe, are terrain, and therefore they don't qualify as a destructible environment, but everything else a player builds or puts into the world, you can destroy it. Alrighty, we're getting here at the top 3 here, and we're going to start it off with YOLOL code. If you don't know what this is, I don't know if you've been living under a rock or something, but essentially this is the game's own programming language. If you don't know already, there are tons of cool codes players who have gotten into the alpha have already made specifically for the language. For an example here, there's a GPS you can build into your ship using YOLOL code from other players. They also plan, from what I understand, having a way that you can actually sell your code to players in game so they don't have to do it themselves. This is a cool dynamic. I'm really excited to see what people can come up with. There's some crazy ideas out there that I've heard of, but we really won't get to experience it in full until we get a lot more players into the game. Alrighty, with number 2, we have space combat. This is something I know is actually a number 1 for most players, but for me it's number 2, and we'll talk about why that is in a second. The space combat is so cool and so in-depth in this game. Yes, you have your turrets, you can just point and click and shoot, but you could also have multiple people using multiple turrets aiming in multiple different directions. You can use the YOLOL code we talked about to set up several turrets to fire in synchronization with each other. You have long-range nukes and torpedoes that you can launch at your enemies. There's just so much to the space combat and so many things you can do to change it up. So I'm really excited to actually participate in this and get a chance to see what it feels like. From what I've seen in footage, it seems like most ships, unless they're pretty darn large, are relatively flimsy when it comes to space combat. That means if they shoot one bullet through your hull and they hit a wire inside your ship that connected your engines to your cockpit, then you have no way to control your ship, and if you left those engines on, it's gonna keep going. So I am super excited to see this, see what it's gonna feel like, and see so much more, as I know the space combat is just going to be amazing, and hopefully semi more realistic than something we would see in, say, EVE Online, where you just have massive shields and massive amounts of damage you can take before your ship works. I just love the idea that one stray bullet is all it takes to win yourself a battle. Okay, so last but certainly not least, in our number 1 spot, we have ship design. Ship design in this game is everything. You can build mining ships, you can build combat ships, you can build transport ships, you can build semi-automatic transportation ships. You can do so much with your ships, and the building tools are so ridiculously in-depth, it's kind of crazy. Almost to the point now to where they're trying to implement a simple build tool so that players who are still learning the mechanics of how to build the wiring, how to build the hull, how to use stability within the game, can actually build themselves a ship that's not total garbage. I'm glad they're doing this, but I am just so excited to see it, as just to build one thruster engine, you need multiple parts to make it function. We're not talking about, oh, you need a battery and a generator and all that stuff. We're talking about literally just the thruster itself takes multiple parts to be put together, some of which can be changed for different parts in order just to get the thruster working, and then you still have to hook it up to a generator which has its own parts. You have fuel tanks, which have its own parts, and then you have all the coding for the systems to work together. I am just so excited to see what people can come up with. I know there's going to be tons of silly designs and tons of absolutely awesome ones. Alrighty, so that is the 10 things we are personally most excited for in Starbase. Let us know if we missed something down below in the comments, and make sure to subscribe if you guys did like this video. We do plan on putting out beginner's guides and tons of new content for Starbase as soon as it releases. So do keep us followed, do keep us subscribed if that's something you're interested in, as there's probably going to be tons of it coming onto our channel here soon. If you are looking for a group to play with, you can always join our Discord by hitting the button right here on our YouTube channel, and go ahead and get involved, where we can set you up and get you involved in our personal company that we're going to be playing Starbase with. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching. We could not do this without you, and I will see you in the stars.